Welcome back to OSB Miniature Studio, and in this final part of my Necromunda Diorama series I'll be showing you how I created neon signage for this area of the Underhive where my Goliath gang, the Jank Point Jackers, are up against an APC of Panelite Enforcers. I'll also show you how I added various finishing touches to the piece, including bullet casings, oily rags, general weathering, and what brought this piece together, and then finish on a showcase of the entire piece. So without further ado, let's commence. So these are my Necromunda neon signs, which have been mainly constructed from using leftover sprues. On one of them I've infilled the sign with some vermin mesh, and to form the letters themselves I've used some plastic coated aluminium wire, which I've bent using a set of pliers, following online reference images of neon signs. To start these off, I give all of the frames a coat of Dark Reaper. Now, instead of using Citadel Dark Reaper, I make a mixture of Army Painter speed paints. This is 3 parts Dark Sky to 1 part Iron Wolf to 1 part Airbrush Black. I then give these parts an overbrush of Citadel Skegadon Green using a damp dry brush and a spare piece of hardboard to remove the majority of the paint before overbrushing these onto the frames. All of these pieces are then given a wash of Vallejo Game Wash in black. This is essentially a larger, cheaper pot of Citadel Nun Oil. One thing to say is before using this it must be mixed, and to mix it, stir it. Don't shake it or you end up with this bubbly, frothy mess that I have here. I wasn't too worried for these pieces because they were only being given a very thin coat of game wash, but it's something to be aware of when using this product. With the wash dry, I then give all of the pieces a final dry brush using Citadel Fenrisian Grey. With the dry brush complete, I come back in with some Army Painter plate metal and pick out all of the rivets on these pieces. These base plates on each of the signs were constructed using leftover center pieces from various Necromunda barricades that I'd cut up earlier. So in the frames themselves, I'd pre-chipped these with a scalpel before painting. I now go in with some Vallejo Model Air Chrome airbrush paint and put this into all of these chips to make it look like the bare metal's been exposed. Then making a 50-50 mix of Army Painter Speed Paint Pallid Bone and Gravelord Grey, and then adding an equal amount of Army Painter Speed Paint Medium, I effectively create a version of Magic Wash, which, if you've seen any of my videos before, is just a greyish brown wash that I like to apply to unified builds. I apply this to all of the frames just to dull down that newly added metal and blend it in with the previously dark painted metal frames. I hang this up to dry on my workbench. I now begin the painstaking task of going over all of the signage with some Army Painter matte white paint, slowly building this up with multiple thin layers until all of the letters and signage are back to being a brilliant white base coat. So if looking at reference images of neon signs and how they're one continuous neon tube, we now need to paint over the areas connecting the tubes which we don't want to glow to give the realistic effect of the neon lettering. So to go over these areas, I use a combination of Citadel, Contrast, Black Templar and Army Painter Gravelord Grey. Once this is dry, I take a mixture of Army Painter airbrush fluorescent paints in blue, green, pink, yellow, purple, orange, and then there is no red available at the time, so I use Green Stuff World Fluorescent Red. Next, I run some Army Painter airbrush white paint through my airbrush and just do a little overspray surrounding the letters onto the frames, so I'm adding in some OSL before beginning painting with the fluorescent colours. And I then come back in with the various fluorescents and, as carefully as I can with my airbrush, apply these to the different parts of each of the signs. I'm not too concerned with the overspray, as obviously that adds to the OSL effect, but this was quite time consuming to do and really tested my control of my airbrush. I next use some Army Painter airbrush white paint with a small detail brush to paint a very light semi-translucent white line back into the middle of all of the signs to add the brightest part of the glowing neon, again using reference images of neon signs as a guide. With the signs completed, they are then glued into place using some PVA glue to fix them into the relevant areas of the diorama. I then use some AK Interactive texture paste in asphalt. I apply this using a mixture of a cheap craft sponge brush and using some Nyrite gloves, slowly building this up on the sides of the diorama to hide anywhere where there's foam or MDF or bare foam core still exposed. This I deemed easier than cutting out a precise thin sheet of black and applying it, and once dry this unified all of the various elements of the diorama that are being stuck together to create the final piece and provided a nice matte black finish to the sides of the diorama. I then fix all the miniatures in place. The various scatter terrain that I've painted, including this crate of Molotov cocktails, and the Palanite Enforcers and their Turox APC. I then apply PVA glue to the bases of the barricade and some of the other scatter terrain and sprinkle in a mixture of coarse and fine sand. Once dry, I come in with some Army Painter Dark Stone, which is then dry brushed with Vallejo London Grey and Army Painter Ash Grey. For the corpse below the Goliath leader's feet, I use some Army Painter Speed Paint Slaughter Red to add some pooled blood, streaking this down the gantry with the edge of my brush. I was fortunate enough to have a set of these Necromunda poster transfers, so I cut out various wanted posters and advertisements and apply these around the diorama. I do this using just clean water and a clean damp brush. Some of the posters I paint various crosses over and other graffiti once dry. Then using some various natural toned crepe paper, I tear this up into small rag-like size pieces and then dip this into either the Vallejo Game Wash Black or some Liquitex transparent raw umber, and then drape this on various parts of the diorama to form trash and oily rags. I tape a length of 1mm styrene to one of my wooden blocks and then make a jig out of a piece of grey board, holding it up against the ejector port of the Goliath's minigun as a size guide, and I then paint the styrene rod with Army Painter Greedy Gold. Once dry, I use my jig and my scalpel to cut some bullet casings to size, doing this until I have a small cupful of them. Then using PVA glue, I apply these directly next to the minigun. In the diorama, it's been made to look like this minigun has just finished firing upon the APC and its barrel is glowing, and this Palanite Enforcer sniper has just shot one of the guys on the stairwell, so I add a bullet casing adjacent to him as well. Once the glue is dry, I come in with some more Greedy Gold and do a dot on the end of each of these rounds, before applying a wash of Army Painter Soft Tone. For this Palanite Enforcer, he's rather unfortunately going to be hit by a Molotov from one of the Goliaths up on the gantry. So to form the Molotov, I take this broken bottle from an Age of Sigmar Nobbler kit, slowly shaving away the hand from the neck of the bottle and drilling out the top of the bottle with a pin vise. And then I create flames on this subjugator shield using hot glue. I do this by dabbing the hot glue on, holding my hot glue gun then a set distance away and blowing on it till the glue sets, and then coming back in with my scissors to trim the stringy glue back down, repeating this over and over until I've built up a splashing flame effect that I'm happy with, and then using a final dab of hot glue to fix the broken bottle into the middle of the shield. I use a lighter just to burn away any wispy bits of hot glue before applying a coat of Army Painter matte white to all of these flames and the bottle. I give the bottle a coat of a 50-50 mix of Lamian Medium and Citadel Nighthawk Gloom. Going back and looking at the Slow-Mo Guys Molotov cocktail video, I noticed at the very end of the bottle smashing, there's these smaller flames that licked up the wall. So I decided to go back in and add these with a piece of green stuff, and using my sculpting tool, I press these in various lines and then pick my way upwards to form these smaller flames. I also add a very small bit of green stuff between one of the licks of flame and the end of the bottle to simulate the light on the end of the bottle that's ignited this smashing bottle of petrol. I shade all of the flames using a 50-50 mix of Speed Paint Medium and Army Painter Gravelord Grey Speed Paint before spraying all of the flames with my airbrush using Vallejo Game Ink Yellow, allowing some of the overspray to go onto the Panel Light Enforcer as an OSL, before coming in with Liquitex Pyrrole Red and spraying only the very ends of each of the flames, and then using Liquitex Transparent Raw Umber over the area of the bottle just to add a bit more depth to the flame. I felt it was a bit too cartoon yellow, and then a final spray of black on the very tips of the flames, and the Molotov cocktail is complete. Once this Panel Light Enforcer is fixed in place, I spray around him with the same Vallejo Game Ink Yellow, and then taking the same fluorescent paints I used on the signs, I do a little bit of overspray OSL adjacent to them on the terrain just to further sell the effect of the glowing neon signs. And with that, the piece was complete. Hey, welcome back. So you sat through the whole thing and now you're ready for the showcase. Before we get to that, could you consider leaving me a like, share, or a subscribe? Because, you know, those things brighten my day and make all this hard work worth it. Go on, please, please. Thank you, love you. So without further ado, let's go to the showcase. hey, you're still here at the end of the video. That's amazing, because most people have gone by now, and you know, those people that have left are going to miss out on this part where I say you are a wonderful person and are destined for hobby greatness. Many thanks for staying with me on this journey, and we'll see what we move on to next on the channel. Until then, we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.